just need to grab my notes, I think. So we haven't met formally, Michal and I. So I know you only from your online presence. I know you're a co-founder of Astral Forest, which is where you're working currently. You are doing Power BI monitoring, and interestingly enough, you have an example of you do MicroStrategy to Power BI migrations. It doesn't say anything about Tableau or any other tool. It specifically says about MicroStrategy, which I find, it's curious, or it makes me curious. You yourself are certified in MicroStrategy, so this all comes together as a nice story, except that you're moving away from MicroStrategy. That's true. Yeah, just funny. And then another curiosity is the casino analytics kind of solution that you provide, which is an odd one out to the new viewer, at least. So maybe you can share some thoughts on that.
I will share a little bit of the thoughts on this, because I preferred also like the slide about self-presentation, so you can get to know me. So I will just, in a few sentences, describe all of this a little bit more details.
Well, without further ado, I will shut up then and hand over the mic to you. And, So you're just up for presentation whenever you feel like it.
Okay, I will start it right now.
We see your presentation.
Okay, cool. So thank you, Jens, for inviting me, for having me here. And I think that we can start. So I will present you the business case. I participated in it. I contributed to it. Firstly, let's start with the short agenda of our session. So the first thing, I will introduce myself properly to you. And later we go into the case study. So I will share with you some background of the organization, their business, of the data and BI landscape, of how this landscape is being or was being operated. Later we'll move into the assessment part of this data landscape with the focus on Power BI, because the topic is Power BI. So we'll focus on the Power BI assessment, the quality of the solution, and the role of Power BI monitoring, of collecting the activity data of the users to finish your assessment properly, and later to propose some quick wins, calculate the return on investment, and plan the next steps in the long run. I believe that we'll have some time also for this Q&A session. Okay, so a few words about myself. So as already Jens introduced me, I'm one of the founders of Astral Forest. We are like the consultancy boutique. We started as a 3 people. Right now we are almost 30, and we are working in the casinos industry as well, but not only. We are building like the solutions, the data solutions from scratches to the end meaning this Power BI layer, plus the adoption of the solution and the governance once it's already running. I started my career in MicroStrategy this 12 years ago. It was my first BI job. MicroStrategy has a huge delivery center in Warsaw. I started there, and almost immediately I was sent to Paris, to France. I spent over there 4 years, meeting my wife as well, so it was a good adventure. And regarding the data field, MicroStrategy taught me that 2 very important factors. One of them being the importance of the good, proper data modeling when it comes to the scalability of the BI data solutions, of how much time can you save if you have this proper data layer, and also the importance of the metadata, because MicroStrategy was a little bit visionary at the beginning of the BI product, and they integrated this metadata engine into the product. I'm trying right now to replicate this concept and building, for example, the ETL frameworks, and also as the basics of the data glossaries. So this metadata factor was extremely important. It was even 12 years ago already available over there. So this was my first experience. Later, I moved to the Microsoft technology stack, mainly to the Azure, and I stayed there basically today. So this is the reason why also I'm engaged in these migrations of MicroStrategy to Power BI, because I know the both tools. In the last few years, I was even more into the migrations, especially the migrations of different on-premise BI solutions to Azure, to Power BI. One of this migration also I will share a little bit during this session. And on the daily basis, right now, I'm into really designing and executing different BI and data strategies. So this is about myself, about me professionally and privately. I am a big dog lover and side hunt lover. I'm a happy guardian of one of the dogs. So if you want to just chat about the side hunts, I'm more than welcome to engage in such a conversation as well. So let's move to the case study. And I will start right now with describing the business part of our adventure. So the case study is about the Retail Max. Retail Max, I'm just anonymizing a little bit the real company, the real names, etc. So everything is a little bit changed, a little bit anonymized. So the anonymity of the people of the organization is conserved. So we have this Retail Max company. Retail Max company is the retailer dealing with all of the electronic products, books, media, cultural goods, lifestyle, basically all of the products you can imagine, but for FMCG and beauty sector. Retail Max was created like 6 years ago as the result of the merger of two different companies. And this is a very important thing to keep in your head. Because this merger resulted in some situations, some infrastructure that must be dealt with. After this merger, the company decided to keep two distinct brands of brick and mortar stores, and also two distinct corresponding to this brick and mortar stores online stores, one of which also contains right now the marketplace. So we are in the commerce industry, to put it simply, in the retail industry, and we have this omni-channel customer possible reach. They have almost 500 stores in Europe. They have two different ERP systems. One is based on Microsoft Dynamics, and the other one was based on Proginov solution. This was like the oldish ERP system inherited after the other company. They have also two different warehouse management systems. The online stores were built upon the on-premise infrastructure, and right now they are to be migrated to Azure. And of course, we have also two different on-premise BI concepts. Every single one is inherited by one or the other company. So right now, a little bit more information about this data landscape. So we have this hybrid environment. We have three different three different BI solutions. So first of all, the one that you can see on the screen is this high-level design of the existing Azure solutions. So we have classical approach using Azure Data Factory as the orchestrator. We'll have data lake and also Synapse dedicated pool. And within the Synapse, we'll have the data warehouse plus all the jobs, all the data transformations will be happening over there, are happening over there. Later, some of the data goes to Azure Analysis Services, and some of the data is consumed directly by Power BI reports. So this is our Azure setup, the newest one, because it was created after the merger of the two companies. Beside this, we have also two on-premise solutions. One of them will be based at the Microsoft technological stack. So we'll have a SQL Server reporting services, and SQL Server integration services. Reporting services, this is this data consumption layer when the user can just open the web browser, get there, and take a look on the reports, subscribe to them, receive them also in the email as Excel files, PDFs, and so on. We have very similar solution, but using MicroStrategy as this business intelligence tool. MicroStrategy will be based on the Oracle Exadata technology. Exadata technology will be using Genio software as this ETL tool. As you can see right now, we have three different concepts, the BI concepts. It has the impact on the team. Sorry, I'm reading the questions as well. So we need to have like the very versatile team to manage all of these technologies. Okay, so you may wonder right now how all of this is operated. So some key information about the organization. So the first thing, the most important, there is no chief data officer within the company. And although there is the CIO, the CIO is not directly responsible for the data BI department. Also, what's extremely important, in the last few years, basically just after the merger, there was very significant rotation on the head of BI position. So the people were coming, trying to do something, develop some kind of the strategy, and after a few months they were leaving. So basically all the data solution was unmanaged during the last few years. Although we have the central BI data department for both brands in the holding, in the group, the team is heavily unstaffed. So also the individual departments such as logistic departments, such as pricing department, finance department, marketing department, they hiring their own data analysts just to bypass the bottlenecks in the central BI data department, and they are producing this shadow data, shadow BI frequently. A huge quantity of this ungoverned objects is being created all the time. What's more important, there is no direct cooperation, participation in the cost of BI data department by the other department. And this has two negative consequences for the BI data department. The first one is that there is no awareness of the cost by the different departments because they are not engaged into the spending of the money. Basically, we cannot work in the project mode like this. They are just delivering the tickets, demanding something to be done, or asking their own data people to deliver something, but they do not participate in the cost of this BI data department, so they don't have the awareness. The other thing is that also they don't know, so they do not participate in the cost, so they don't have this awareness. As the result of the absence of the head of BI person, we have very poor documentation. Nothing is really written in a good way about the BI solution. Everything is based on this tribal knowledge. In this situation, we have this light at the end of the tunnel. Claire is joining as the new head of BI and data. And once she is joining, she has to face some kind of the challenges. So the first one is how to harness all of this chaos of data and BI. In order to harness this, she must learn how does all data landscape look like, what data products or what part of the data infrastructure, the reports are crucial for the organization, how to handle all of these priorities as well. And also, once she joins, she gets the clear message from the executive team that the cost of the Azure are very high. So there is something she should do about it. At the same time, during her onboarding process, she gets the information about from her peers, like the head of pricing department, director of the finance department, and so on. They were complaining about the robustness of the solution, especially about the data quality and also data accessibility issues. Because in some periods of time during a day, it was very difficult to access some of the data, most probably because of the overload of all the solutions. So she must also learn how to reduce the signups or Azure Analysis Services load, and of course, how to drive and increase the data culture within the company, which was extremely poor. So she decides to follow the very simple process. Let's start with the assessment of the current setup. Let's identify the quick win. Through the quick wins delivery, we can gain the trust of the executive team, and later we can develop the full BI data strategy roadmap and execute. This is also the moment when Claire contacted myself, because we used to work previously together and we already done similar thing for the other organization. So we are starting with the case study. Firstly, the case study is divided into 5 technological pillars and one about the process and the way of working of Power BI, of the BI department. It was divided into these 5 distinct areas because you need also the different set of skills to deliver this assessment. So we can start with this Azure as data platform to check all the Azure structure, the roles, responsibilities, costs, disaster recovery policies, access management, security, and so on, and logging all of the actions, stuff like this. So this is like the very wide and big picture overview. We have also the part which is exclusively for the on-premise solutions. So the architecture of those, checking up if we still covered by the support of the used software, what is the usage of the data available on this platform, so who are the users, do we have any kind of the exclusive data available only within MicroStrategy or reporting services, how many people use it, who is using it, and also if we have any dependencies with the other systems with an organization. And it was extremely insightful as well to do this assessment, because we discovered, for example, in this part, that there was lots of reverse ETL jobs ongoing. So, for example, the mobile application web was filled with data using SQL Server. SQL Server simply. There was the part of the jobs delivering the data directly from one ERP system through the SQL Server database to the application, to the mobile application database, and the mobile application was used in the shops in the operational level as this application when someone goes to the shop and like an employee and can scan the barcodes to receive the information about the latest price of the product and the accessibility within the warehouse. So it was very interesting to find out, and we needed also to cover it later in the process of migration. The next step was also to conduct this Azure ETL and Synapse assessment to check out the effectiveness of the solution, the performance, and also the degree of the adoption to the best practices. If we have any kind of the Kimball or built-in Mon or Data Vault 2.0 solution or not at all, do we have also the separation of the test and the dev and the production environment? Do we follow the best practices with the design of the solution, like for example this medallion architecture? And also, do we have like the performing this data consumption layer, or do we have like extremely complicated, complex views that there are just very hard to execute on the daily basis? Speaking of ETL, what needs to be checked also the effectiveness of adding the new data source, the new data provider, and if we follow especially any kind of the metadata driven process or not. The other step is our Azure analysis services, so the quality of the data model, the way of usage it. Here we found out, for example, that this Azure analysis services was used as the data entry point for some teams. They were simply downloading lots of data through DAX Studio to be used later somewhere else in the other processes. So they were also like overloading this Azure Analysis Services solution, and also the cost of this Azure Analysis Services were extremely high because it was like S9 V2 tier, so extremely expensive, and also potentially we could have found a way here for a quick win if you was to reduce, for example, this the duration of operating within a week of this Azure Analysis Services. And the most important thing for this session, so this Power BI service and governance assessment, I will go shortly to the details of this one. The last one is this BI and data department, the way of working. This is also extremely important because any problems within the process or with the quality of the taken decision later are visible on the other technical layers. So for example, someone decides to opt for a quick win too long, and we may have problem with the ETL, or someone decides to do everything in Power BI. Once again, we'll have the problem of the business logic, which will be placed in Power Query in DAX on the SQL layer. So this way of working was also very important. Speaking of Power BI assessment right now, so the first of all, you must decide, and we needed to decide as well, what kind of the assessment is needed. If we have like a few dozens of reports and a few semantic models, we can get very deeply into all of them. But if we have several thousands or hundreds of the reports, we cannot just randomly pick up one or two reports and check the quality, ignoring all of the others. So we just need to know what is the scale of Power BI usage within the organization. Another thing is to know also what kind of Power BI licenses are in use. Because for example, if we use this Power BI premium capacity or embedded capacity, also this part of the effectiveness of these capacities must be included into our assessment. How does Power BI development process look like? So we try to know the scale between the self-service development and the centralized development, because maybe one organization is delivering only semantic models, which are very correct, set up nicely to be later used by the business users so they can produce individually their reports, or maybe some organizations fall into the self-service or they fall into producing these reports centrally. The other important question are also how Power BI adoption is measured. In many organizations, it's not measured at all, because you need to be high on this maturity level of organization to be able to measure this Power BI adoption. And even rarer, it happens that someone measures the return on investment of Power BI reports, because once again, it's extremely difficult if we are not talking about, for example, the logistic case when you can just get a reduction of the dead stock. Okay, so how to do this? Of course, the interviews with the principal actors, take a look on the Power BI service, and analysis of the development process plus analysis of the user's behavior, and getting the information about the Power BI reports within your Power BI tenant. First thing is, how many reports do we have? How many users? And do we have any kind of the business owners listed to these reports? Because if you want to touch the report, to restructure it, or to merge the two reports together, we should contact this business owner. It depends if we have them or not, maybe easier or harder to do. So in order to start it, we can do this in this manual way, so through the series of the interviews and through the Power BI service. So we can go to Power BI service, we can just go report by report and check its user statistics, collect the data, write it down somewhere, and check out the data sources, check out the semantic model responsible for this report, and try to assign this business owner. But imagining that all of these activities takes you like 10 minutes and you have 600 reports to check. If you are in this situation, it will mean that you need to spend 1,000 hours of collecting all of this information. So 1,000 hours is like 120 days. So it's too much for any single sane head of BI to accept the duration of such Power BI assessment. So what we decided with Claire here is to go for the automatic way to collect all of this data. And this is how also the Power BI monitoring basically was born. Power BI monitoring is just the analysis of the data of Power BI activities in Power BI. And here we collected the data. And firstly, once you collect the data, you have only 30 days of the last data available in your, let's say, an analytical platform, because you can only request from Power BI API this 30 last days of the data, of the activity data. What we get as well, we have this complete vision of the actual report consumption. So we can easily note the highest, the most important for the organization reports. And we can define this importance, for example, as the reports that are open the most frequently within your Power BI tenant, or also by the VIP. So for example, we can pay the attention to the report which are opened by the board. We get also the information about the most frequent users, so the users who are using most actively Power BI, and we can also identify the reports corresponding to this usage. And also what was interesting, we can also have the information about not used reports, so the reports that should be cleaned up. Plus also we can identify through the consumption of the reports, the business owners. So we can force this first version of the identification. If we don't have it, the most consuming a given report person can become this business owner of this report. So how does it look like from the technical aspect is that we just connected to Power BI REST API. So we are able to collect all this users activity logs, plus the information about the Power BI tenant setup. Another source of the data information was this Graph API. From Graph API, we received the information about Power BI licenses assigned to every individual user, and also about Azure Active Directory groups. So two sources of the data, two sources of the information. Later, the orchestration is done in Azure Data Factory. We have Azure SQL DB. Within this Azure SQL DB, what we have is a small data warehouse with a bronze, silver, and gold layer. And the gold layer is used as the layer of the data and the star schema model for Power BI reports. So this is like this technical overview of the solution. If you are interested in it, I will be putting very shortly like the GitHub version, so you can go to it and download it for yourself. Okay, so let's go for the results of Power BI assessment. So first of all, we collected the information for this tool, the monitoring tool, and we found out that we had like 5,500 reports within the organization. And what's even more interesting, 2,200 reports were not used in the last 120 days in the organization. Why 120 days? Claire decided that we should have at least this 120 days of data, of historic of the data, to take the decisions afterwards. Once again, after the connecting to Power BI REST API, you can get only this 30 days of data. So we needed to wait additional 90 days to make the resume of Power BI assessment. We have also like 1,600 reports that were used less than 3 times in the last 120 days. So those are the reports that you can suspect that they can be put into archive as well. Either someone just opened them because it's looking for like the weekly sales reports and you have 20 different weekly sales reports, or you can also, or maybe some of them are actually used and needed, but you need to verify it with the business, with the users actually. We discovered as well that we have like 1,100 active Power BI users with the Pro license assigned, 200 of the active Power BI Premium per user users, and almost 700 users that were assigned Power BI license, but they have not used or had not used Power BI actively in the last 120 days. So either they didn't need those licenses, or maybe they already left the organization with the Azure Active Directory account still working. Additionally, almost 80 users were active, but using Power BI without any kind of license, only using this My Workspace possibility. So once again, these users can potentially be assigned the proper license to contribute in the better way to the organization within the daily work. We discovered also that we had almost 1,000 issues with the dataset refreshes in the last 120 days. So the solution was not very reliable. And speaking about the self-service, almost 70% of all the actions were done in the private workspace. So just the business self-service users producing a report, sharing the report with their colleagues. So just to a little bit sum up also a few details, either from this Power BI monitoring solution or through the just individual sessions with the users and checking up the reports. So the most popular reports in the organization were self-service created, and especially there was the most consumed one was the report about the sales built by one of the district managers, and this report had almost like 300,000 activities. So huge quantity, especially if you compare it for the same period. One of the best of the highly used centrally produced reports was at 5K of activity. So a huge gap between the usage of this most popular reports that came from the self-serve and the centrally produced. What's more, you can easily observe also the Pareto rule in the consumption of the reports, because it works like this, that almost 20% of these reports that are the highest usage contributes to the 80% of all usage of your Power BI tenant. So it gives you very nice information, especially for the future, because you can easily concentrate, put your effort on delivering the value for this key 20% of the data of the solution, which is the most needed for the organization. So this is one thing. Of course, no existing naming convention, because you have the list of all the reports. You can check very quickly if there is some kind of the convention on the report level, on the workspace level or not. So we discovered that there was not. We discovered also that we had almost like 20 weekly sales reports, because they were created individually, so potentially they should have been merged as well, and also the lack of separation of semantic models and Power BI reports. So basically what it means, it does mean that one Power BI report equals to what? Semantic models, even containing the same data, are querying the data serving layer multiple times per week, per day, depending on the setup. And of course, also the administration of the solution was pretty costly, because the accesses were granted mainly at this user and report layer. It was something to be changed as well. Okay, so let's focus right now on these quick wins. So first of all, we can just archive the unused reports. And we decided to put this more than 2,000 reports to the archive. In order to do so, you can either use the script, that's a PowerShell script, to archive all the reports that are in the central workspaces, the standard workspaces. However, if you want to put into archive also the unused reports that are in the private workspaces, it is a little bit more challenging, because you don't have direct code access within the console to those workspaces. Only, I think it was last year, Microsoft introduced the way to assign yourself the access to this private workspace within Power BI web page. If you are a tenant administrator, you can grant the access yourself. So we use this opportunity, this possibility, and we developed like the Selenium script going through all of these personal workspaces, assigning the admin to the particular workspace to be able later to run the script to move all of this not used reports to the archive. So this is like the one of these quick wins in the short run. We have also the optimization of the unused Power BI licenses. Some security risks were also limited. For example, this famous one about the visuals which are not certified. And also, as the outcome of this assessment, we are able to produce the roadmap, the strategy for the next 24 months, and also design this Power BI champions because we knew who were the most active users. Plus, you have also the cleaning of the workspaces, delivering the standard template to work with the Power BI reports, JSON theme, and so on. What I like the most, not only about this Power BI, but also the wider aspect, this forced identification of the business owners, because it accelerates a lot the discussion about the future of the solution and taking the decision about putting some reports off or merging them together to create one of their sales reports instead of 15 or 20. Okay, so right now let's focus a little bit on the return on investment. Here is that small table. This table was used by Claire to discuss with the exec team with the different items on the list. The first one is this optimization of the license usage. So the formula is pretty simple. It's 12 months multiplied by the number of the users unassigned the Power BI license minus the number of the users that should have the Power BI license multiplied by the cost of the licenses. And here we have this 65K to be saved annually. We have also estimated with Claire that through the cleanup, for the setup of Power BI workspaces, we make, through archiving of the redundant reports, we make the Power BI environment easier to navigate, easier to find the information that someone needs. And we judged that we can save up to 5 minutes per week due to this cleanup per person. From the logs of the activity, we knew that we had 733 weekly active users. So we multiplied it by 5 minutes by 52 weeks, and the nice number of 132 days annually to be saved. Through the simplified administration of Power BI, we estimated also that we can have some return on investment regarding this part of the BI internal team. So we calculated the number of the tickets about Power BI during the last 12 months in Jira, about this more governance or administration part of Power BI. We decided that we can cut this number by half through the introduction of the proper administration, proper governance setup, and also we multiplied it by the average number of hours needed for the resolution of the ticket. This number came from Jira add-on Tempo, and it gave us this number of 94 days to be saved annually. The last item on the list, but not the least one, is also the enhancement of the proportion of signups through the reduction of the number of queries running on the signups dedicated pool. Reduction of the queries is due to the reduction of the semantic models actively querying signups dedicated pool. So we compared here like the daily average elapsed time during the last 30 days before archival of the data sets and after and we took also the average of the 30 days after the action of archival, and we obtained this for 364 minutes of reduction in elapsed time daily. So those are the numbers. And speaking about the Claire in her perspective, so what did she get basically for all of these actions and also for the tool is the first thing, of course, delivering the quick wins, showing the numbers, equals gaining the trust of the exec team. Gaining the trust also facilitated the discussion about getting basically the budget for the execution of the whole BI and data roadmap, and also she get the tool to negotiate with the different business units, sponsors, and so on. Because right now she can just check the consumption of the reports. If someone constantly is asking about the new reports to be delivered, but this person is not using the previous ones, it's a nice tool just to negotiate with such a person and focus on the ones that are actually using the tools that are given to them. What about the next steps in the long run? So the main goal is, of course, the setting the data culture. It's happening right now for the drive and change management. We decided also to refactor the crucial reports, and we decided to do this in the two ways. The first of all, just get the maximum possible of the current data setup, just to deliver the enhanced version of the existing reports, not touching especially the underlying data structure, just to show some value to the users, to convince them that the change is needed. Of course, we enforced also some centralization report policies. So, for example, if one report which was produced in self-service mode reaches some kind of a threshold, when it comes to the numbers of the active users or the usage or the VIP users, such a report is put into centralized repository. And of course, also what is following right now, we constantly monitor the orphaned or rarely used reports to be checked, and also to do this cleanup like every 6 months to put the redundant report into the archive. All the organization of workspaces and permissioned policy assigned to Azure Active Directory groups is ongoing right now, because we need also to change the process of onboarding of the people, so the people within onboarding can already be assigned the proper groups, so they can have the access to the needed Power BI reports from the day zero, depending on the job position, and so on. So this is about the Power BI, but we need to come back also to this bigger picture, the bigger big data, the bigger BI/data strategy. So what happened was that we put all the results of the assessment together and developed a common roadmap afterwards. For example, we decided that Azure Analysis Service model needed to be broken up and decentralized, because the policy was to put everything into Azure Analysis Services. So this is the reason why we had this huge, enormous S9 V2 version, which was inefficient because also the lack of the good practices within the modeling of the data. We decided to do the complete refactor of the data warehouse layers, and in order to do so, we are following simply this Pareto rule. So we are focusing firstly on this top 20% of the most needed, most used data. From the top 20% of the used reports, we can define like the top 20% of the tables, the data sources, and so on. And of course, also we decided to reintroduce like the new ETL framework, more efficient based on the metadata. So the whole process can be just faster. On-prem migration is ongoing. One of the environments, the environment of based on the Microsoft technology stack, is already closed, but we still have this MicroStrategy part and so on. And the most important thing was and still is to change the way how BI and the business departments, business units are working together. So we decided to run this, let's call it POC, but it's pretty long, because we started with supply chain to work in the way that they have their own budget, and the budget is consumed by the BI data resources. And with them, we are just arriving to the end to show that the process was properly set up, that they are right now more aware about the cost, about the way the BI concepts put in work. And also, slowly but steadily, we are rebuilding this data warehouse from scratches, and Power BI as well. So this is one introduction of the change. And what's more, the team right now is not focused on this ticket work, that the tickets are arriving from Jira and are evaluated on the bi-weekly basis, but more focused on this project work together with the business units. So we have the dedicated small teams working together with the business units and delivering slowly but steadily the value. Also, the team was enhanced because we are lacking like the data architect at the beginning, some data engineers, but right now it's a little bit better. Okay, so I believe this is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I think right now is a good moment to ask them. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, so I was monitoring the chat during your session, and there was a couple of comments on frameworks to monitor Power BI that are out there. Joanna has shared her own GitHub repo, I think.
I will share my GitHub repo.
Yeah, okay. But other than that, there are no questions. So Fernando is coming up with one. Who approved the purchasing of licenses and server expenses? Yeah, and I kind of agree and know where he's going because that seems an obsessive amount of money to throw at services. How do you deal with such a scenario?
With what scenario of who approved the purchasing of licenses and server expenses?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, there's 600 unused Pro licenses.
Yes, because there was no governance, so there was no single person responsible for purchases of the licenses and controlling them afterwards. So this is the lack of the processes, mostly that the fault of a single person.
Yeah, so leadership just brushes that off as not their responsibility, or what happens in a situation like that?
In the situation that you have more licenses than needed, in the situation, basically, no, it was like a good way to show to the executive that something is happening, and working maybe more on this awareness that they need actually the CDO position to be occupied, so we don't have the problems like this in the future, and then more processes and governance. Because right now, the result of all these problems was that during the last basically 6 years, everyone was working in this quick wins attitude. So let's deliver something quickly, not think about the scalability of the solution. And after the few years, you're ending up in the situation. So this is, I think, the lesson that can be learned, basically.
So looking forward rather than looking backwards is...
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's difficult to look, for someone responsible or
true.
Just put it. And the team as well. The team was just working in this way because they forced also huge pressure, could pressure from the different departments. They needed just the analytical tools to be done, and they didn't have enough capacity. So very often they just went, for this into this quick win direction to just get rid of one ticket and take another. So this is a problem. And as they didn't have, this person, either CDO or even like the stable head of BI data department, their voice was not heard by the board. There was lack of the communication. So there's no single person to blame. It's like the multiple different situations that just led to this outcome.
Yeah, and so looking forward, it's easy to show progress when you can cut costs for 600 pro licenses. Just like that, right? So it's easy to gain traction on that kind of direction.
Yes, it's easy to just open the discussion about how it should be done, because you are showing some value at the beginning that you are bringing to the company.
So another question, was there any cost savings from cleaning up the personal workspaces? As far as I'm aware, it does not draw on the premium capacity.
No, we didn't have the premium capacity here. So it was just, like the normal classical setup of Power BI without any premium or embedded capacities, just the standard licenses, both of them. And the questions, was there any cost savings from cleaning up the personal workspaces? The personal workspaces, some of them were using also the data available on Synapse dedicated pool, because some of the business users, they had the access to the Synapse direct one, so they would just produce some reports. So by eliminating those reports, you eliminated basically also the cost of the queries running on the Synapse.
Yeah, so from my understanding, you have to specifically assign a personal workspace to a premium capacity, but otherwise it's a shared capacity sign up by default.
I don't know if you can assign the premium capacity to the personal workspace. Maybe you can, but I have never seen this. Maybe I'm mistaken here, but I'm not. Oh, you can. Thank you, Domantas. And you have the saving also on the layer. If many people have access to the reports within the personal workspaces, it creates a little bit of the chaos. And just for the reduction of them, you can have some savings like this in this way. Less objects to think about. It's better to think about like 1,000 of Power BI reports than about 6,000. At least in my head.
At least it gets you kind of a focus.
Yes, exactly.
I think that was the end of the questions, and we are just 2 minutes shy of the mark, so perfectly timed. And thank you for a very nice presentation. I think we will already now announce that you will be back with a follow-up session on this one, where we will go into more of the master data issues, and maybe you can fill in some words here for that session, just as a nice round-off.
Okay, so just like the introduction to the next topic, it will be about this master data management, but the live session. We won't be using any kind of the master data management software. It will be also like the business case for the pricing. For the pricing department, will be building just a tool to look about the price indices for the e-commerce store, using also the data that was purchased from the different data providers in the internet. So we can compare, for example, our store to the other operating on the same markets. And we had some challenges how to map the different products, competition, and so on. This is basically the topic of the next slides. Wondering what's in the nice question. That's the surprise for the next session.
So one final round-off question: how long was the entire project or assessment?
Okay, so I start with the project. Project is still ongoing, but multiple phases, multiple projects, because we are talking about basically the refactor of all the BI platform within a company. So it takes, I think it will take like more 2 years to be finished. So in total 3 years, let's say. And how long was the entire assessment? So the assessment was run during the 30 days, but you must remember that we waited also for the collection of the user statistics to complete it. So the duration was like this 120 days to have all the results, so we have enough data to analyze and to propose the set of the recommendations.
Wow, okay.
Of course, you can draw some conclusions early on, but to be sure what to do about, for example, the archival of the reports, it's not recommended to do it just after 30 months. Also, some organizations will argue that 120 days is enough because you have some kind of seasonality as well. So it depends on your attitude to the risk as well as this chief of BI.
Yeah. You have to respect certain work patterns as well. Makes sense. All right. I think that wraps up the session for today. Thank you very much for coming on, Michal, and I hope to see you back in April.
Thank you a lot for hosting me and giving me this opportunity to share some insights, some knowledge.
Have a good day, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.